Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with a Coach. Today we have a question from our friend Jonathan who says, how can a person train themselves to stop pulling their strikes out of fear of hurting their opponents? Thanks. I have heard so many iterations of this question. I can't punch people in the face when I fight. Now, Jonathan, I hope you're talking about actual fighting and not sparring, because in sparring you should be pulling your punches. You should not be injuring your training partners. So again, in sparring, keep it light, keep it technical, make sure you're learning something rather than injuring each other. Okay? But in a fight, when push comes to shove, if you do not have the capacity to put some violence in your violence, the other guy will. And maybe you need to experience a couple of beatdowns. I know I did. When I started out, man, the hardest thing was not the technique. It was being able to put myself in a frame of mind where I was able to hurt another human being and be okay with that. Because we are civilized people, right? We grow up in a civilization, in a city, in this society that rewards us for good behavior, that rewards us for not hurting people and punishes us for hurting others, right? We often grow up with morals being preached at us about how we should not hurt other people, and that's good for the most part until it comes to cage fight time. And then that tends to get in the way. You have to be able to separate one situation from another, because one situation is not like the other. If you are a kid sitting at home and your brother is sitting on the couch with you and you're playing video games and the game's not going the way you want, it's not okay to punch him in the face. That is an inappropriate response. That is an inappropriate use of violence. If you are in a combat sport, in an MMA fight, which is the sport of fighting, and you are in a position to hit that other guy in the jaw and to end that fight via knockout, and you don't because you feel bad about it, I don't want to hurt him, then you are the one who's going to get hurt. That is an appropriate time to put some violence in your violence. Why? Because at that point it's not personal. It's not acting out of maliciousness or spite or hate. It's doing a job. A very specific job that both men in that cage have agreed to do. They have come to a consensual understanding. We are now going to participate in a fight to determine who is the better fighter in this particular occasion. And that's okay. You have to be able to not separate good guy you from bad guy you, but rather understand that when you're fighting in a cage, it's not bad to punch and kick people. That's your job. And if you're not doing your job, that's bad. And if you're not willing to do that job, go get another job. It can take a long time to understand the difference for most people, especially for really nice people. I see this a lot with women, especially, who want to train, because many women are just naturally more empathetic people with a high level of emotional intelligence. And the idea of physically hurting someone is very repugnant to a lot of the female students that I teach. And so they like the idea of, hitting pads and jumping around and all that, but when it actually comes to punching someone in the face, they're like, I don't want to hurt you. I've heard these words so many times. When sparring with female students, I don't want to hurt you, to which I generally reply, don't worry, you won't. I got this question about this guy, asking about some woo-woo, no-touch martial arts. And he said he had this experience. Like he said, I didn't believe in this no-touch martial arts, but I met this no-touch martial art master. And he told me to hit him, and that he would use his power to stop me from hitting him. And I couldn't hit him. I just couldn't bring my hand up. And my response to that was, well, have you ever hit anybody before? No. Well, there you go, man. You are not psychologically able to do it. I could stand in front of you. I'm not a chi, woo-woo, no-touch master, and say, punch me in the face, and you still wouldn't do it. Why? Because you have a certain level of respect for the rules of society and the moral code that you live by that tells you not to. I wonder how many of those no-touch chi masters put themselves in situations like that, where they surround themselves with really nice guys that they know would not hurt a fly. And they say, I will use my chi powers to stop you from hitting me. And they're like, it's working because I can't psychologically put myself in a dark enough place to hurt this helpless, stupid man who's asked me to do this thing. I had a friend, Jake Paul. He was a pro fighter, and later he became a jouster. A lot of people ask me what I think of historical European martial arts. I think it's cool. It's fun. More power to you if you like that stuff. Sword fighting, it's awesome stuff. I haven't spent a great deal of time participating in it, but I have watched it from the outside, and I do find it very interesting. But he became a jouster. It's a dangerous sport, riding a horse with a lance trying to knock the other guy off. Anyway, but Jake Paul, he's a tough dude. And I remember my old coach Shane Brenner, invited him and some other tough guys over to do some backyard boxing. And so we're out there, and I was at this phase where I still had a really hard time hitting people in the context of a fight. And so we're out there sparring, and I'm doing some boxing with Jake, and he throws a couple of jabs at me and lands, and he notices I'm not really throwing back. I'm not really connecting. And he kind of pulls me aside and says, hey, just punch me. And I'm like, and I couldn't do it, much like the, that woo-woo master asking that guy to hit him, and he would block the punch with his chi or something. And I couldn't do it because I was still in that civilized mode. I'm a nice guy. Nice guys don't do this. And he said, look, you need this. Punch me. And eventually he talked me into it, and I punched him in the face. He's like, good, now do it again. And he takes this undefended blow. And man, to his credit, man, that was a pivotal moment in changing my sport psychology to get me able to actually hit people in a fight. To understand the difference between, all right, this is society, this is, do unto others as we would have them do unto us, right? And this is a cage fight where it is now okay to put violence in your violence because we're all okay with it. We all want that. So man, thanks. Shout out to Jake Paul right there. Jake the Snake Paul. Awesome dude. So I appreciated that so much. So maybe you need a guy like that. And I try to emulate that experience a lot with my students who can't hurt a fly, who can't put themselves in that situation where it's okay to throw a punch with some meaning behind it. Okay? And it works really, really well. A lot of times sparring is built up and put on this pedestal. I get a lot of criticism from a lot of traditional martial artists and other combat sports coaches because when they ask me, when do I start my students into sparring? And my answer is on day one. And they're like, what? Blasphemy, you can't do that. They're not ready yet. You have to fill their head with all kinds of ideas first before you allow them to have any hands-on experience. And here's the problem with that. You fill your student's head with all these ideas first about fighting without any actual pragmatic experience in moving around and using their own bodies. You're setting them up for failure. And then when they actually spar with all these ideas there, they get beat up and they feel helpless and they feel like those ideas don't work. But, and when I say sparring, I'm talking about light contact sparring. If you watch this channel, if you've watched it for any meaningful amount of time, you understand what I'm talking about when I say sparring. Light contact, not hurting or injuring your training partners. Keep it technical. Okay, make sure you're learning something from it. And you can and should be doing that on day one. And so I get these new guys who have trouble with it, and I spar with them. And if I see they're having trouble unloading, I'll give them a very similar experience. It's okay. Hit me. Sometimes they need that. They need to feel what it is like to put their fist on another guy's face. Within reason, of course. And sometimes that's all it takes. They're like, oh, your head didn't explode like in Mortal Kombat. Ah, okay. I can do this now. Sometimes that's all it takes. And sometimes it's a longer process. But, man, if you try to divorce the sparring, like have them, they must train for 3 years before they ever spar, that's doing your students a huge disservice, man. Again, don't set them up for failure. And in giving this answer, I am not setting you up for failure. I'm setting you up for success, my friends. Man, there was a story I heard about what military was it? I don't remember. Some military regime out there around World War II. And before they sent their soldiers off into combat, they would have them kill a rabbit with a knife to try to desensitize them to violence, because people have an adverse reaction to killing and violence. It's just natural. That is the natural state for most people. Most people have some difficulty punching another guy in the face. Now, I'm not telling you go out there and kill a bunny and then you'll be okay. No, that's going to set you up for a different set of psychological issues. I'm telling you, man, if you're not there right now, it's okay. You can get there. And it might be as simple as, having somebody be the representative bunny, the sacrificial bunny, if you will, letting them poke you in the face with your fist once or twice. And it might take some time. You might just have to get trounced in a few fights before you have this epiphany, hey, I actually need to fight back, or I shouldn't be doing this. Some people it happens quick, some people it takes years. So, it is what it is. Thank you for the question. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.